And so I think it's desperate and a weak position to try to put words. I mean, I think precept is basically putting words in people's mouths. It's saying, you already hold my position. Let me tell you all the ways you're lying to yourself about it now.
Hey,
You only do this if you're desperate. If you realized evidentialism has failed, all my Kalam arguments don't work. What's the last thing? They already believe my position. I just need to gaslight them into submission. That's my honest take of precept. That there's no nicer way for me to say it. I think that's what it is.
I have an issue with you lumping in Steelman to that, because Steelman seems like the rational thing you should always do. It'd be like, if there is a way that you can interpret their statement to be stronger or more logical, you can address that, which then also by definition addresses all of the less weak, less strong positions. That's probably what you should do. Like, so if they say something that's really stupid sounding, but you can rephrase it in a very strong way, you probably should.
Yeah, and so Tom, I understand why this is by and large obviously good discussion / debate etiquette. But the reason I'll say that there's probably a good place for steel manning, but to me, if you examine what is actually wrong with the straw man, it's not that it's nefarious. What's wrong with the straw man is that they are talking about a position other than your position. So they are not arguing with you anymore. They're talking about something else other than your position. And to me, we can fall into the same problem when we steel man gratuitously.
No, you're just an asshole if you don't want to steel man. That's it.
Correct. Eddie is 100% correct as always.
I have friends who they pride themselves on their art of steel manning everything everybody says, and they think.
Can you give an example of, like you said, steel man gratuitously? Could you give an example of how you could steel man and represent someone's position better than they are, and that's a bad thing?
Yeah, because in your view, hold up, in your view, it may be better, but that has yet to be determined, and so it could boil down to you steel manning my position into something that you think is better, but I don't think it's better, so I think I'm being misrepresented, and now we might be talking past each other.
Right.
And so
that would be a straw man. That would just be a straw man, because a steel man would have to be. You'd have to like ask, do you think is this what you're saying, or is this a better position of what you're saying, something like that.
Okay, and so so this is why I would say, and this is why I said initially when you brought it up just a second ago, I think there's a good place for it, but it can lead to misrepresentation. And I like to initially take people's position in the way that they worded it, because if I chalk it up into something else, okay, maybe if someone makes some argument that is obviously invalid, you can be like, did you mean this? But ultimately, if they say no, then you have to let them have the consequences of that, because I can't represent you. I can't represent anybody else. And so I should stay on point and pay attention to how the other person is representing themselves, and it is ultimately their responsibility to represent themselves, and it's my responsibility to represent myself. And you said, yeah, that's just a straw man. Well, to me, the kind of essence and the problem is the same often with how people abuse the steel man is, I'm going to chalk your position up into this other thing. Okay, well, it's like I said, I have a friend
I think I got an example. So like a lot of people will say when talking to me, they give an example of some philosophical position. Oh, are you a something deontologist or something? They just give some name and say, here's a philosophical position to make it seem like they're steel manning your position. But really, they're not. They're trying to find something that has some entailments that they can critique that you don't necessarily hold to or don't know what you're talking about. And it's a way to undermine your position. That's definitely a straw man. So that I think would be an example of what you're talking about. But in my experience, when I try to steel man people's positions, I would say that it's always the case that conversation goes more smoothly and makes more progress when I try to address what they mean, not literally the words they're saying, in the most logical way possible. Not like the most philosophical way possible, because they may not mean that, but in the most logical way they could mean it. It tends to make the conversation go more smoothly and make more progress faster. They tend to agree more. They tend to change their minds more and be like, oh, yes, this is what I meant. And they tend to understand the rebuttals more. So to me, in all the cases I've used it, steel manning seems to have like a 90-something% success rate of actually successfully progressing the conversation in an amicable way where both the person I'm talking to and myself have a productive conversation.
Yes, and so that to me makes sense. And so if a person, if you want to try to interpret a person's words based on what they mean, versus a steel man, I'm not sure if that's the same thing as a steel man. And I'm going to admit,
I think it is.
I haven't done extensive research on what a steel man is. I thought a steel man is where you just take something and make it the best version of itself. If you're saying the best version of someone's position is maybe something that they mean, and maybe their words as they present them are not truly representative of what they mean, then I can be on board with that.
Yes.
But I don't know if that's always what people mean when they're talking about steel manning. A steel man, I think, I don't know if someone wants to Google it. I don't know. But a steel man is where
it's interpret a person's words or what they're saying in the strongest possible version. So it's usually meant to get at what they intend by the words. What is it they are trying to say? What is the strongest version of their argument, that what they are saying, not like they're presenting the Muslim kalam, like, you know what, the William and Craig kalam is better. Let's go with that one. That would be a straw man. But it is specifically trying to accurately interpret the meaning or intention behind the words they are using. It's what they mean by the words. That's what a steel man is.
Okay, well, look, I'm a nominalist. I'll grant whatever definitions people want, and I don't care if the internet says something else. So that's what you mean by steel man. I agree with this. But there are other people who use steel man differently. I have a friend, a good friend here on Discord, and he will not. It's kind of hard to get anywhere with him because he'll say, "Gaspar, I think you mean this. Gaspar, I think what you're trying to say is this." It's like, no, I'm trying to say exactly what I just said. Please address it. And it's very frustrating. So that to me, the steel man, where I'm going to take a bunch of chaff and try to chalk it up and reify it into something nice, that is the steel man that I say has at its heart the same problem as the straw man, in that it is no longer talking about the opposition's position. Okay, that's what I'm complaining about. But the definition of steel man that you gave is something that I can agree with, because okay, if you think a person has maybe poorly worded their position, then you can. To me, this is almost what you're advocating for is almost clarification. Well, let me clarify.
Like,
do you mean this?
Definition that I've seen is like trying to express or produce like the best form of the core argument the person is trying to make. So what they intend, like their intention, is the focus.
Yeah. So I agree with this. I'm not one to. I mean, I don't think I've ever actually looked up Steelman, but I think I've heard.
That's good.
Okay.
That's nice progress. I appreciate it, because I was always in disagreement with you about your objections to steel manning, and I understand it more now based on what you've experienced of steel man's being a misrepresentation of your position, where they're trying to like impart a more like rigorous philosophical view that you don't necessarily hold. That makes sense of why you have a disdain for steel manning.
Yeah, and like many things, there's a use and a misuse of it. Okay, now again, I said I'm a nominalist, so I'm not like Steve McRae, where I'm going to fight with someone about definitions and which dictionary says this or that. I'll just grant your definition and tell you whether I agree with it, and your definition I agree with. Other people's definitions of steel man I don't agree with. I have a friend, like I told you, who thinks that he has the knowledge to make everybody's positions better. And it's hard to get anywhere with him because of this. But I like him. He's great, but it's just difficult. And so
bring him to the TJump Discord so he can be corrected.
He's already in there, but I'm not going to name any names. Okay. So anyway, he's already in there, but I'm not going to name any names. But anyway, it's terribly frustrating, and in my opinion, it is like I said. Okay, you can see why I would think that this has at its heart the same problem as the straw man. It's like, you are no longer talking about my position. No, I don't want you to reword my position. I've told you that I have represented it in the words that I want it represented in. And if you keep pressing me, then I'm just going to assume you don't want to like actually talk to me, you know? So, yeah. So yes, I believe we've reached some clarification on this issue. So, yeah. So the way you define it, I agree with. But again, there are other people who define it differently, and those are the people I take issue with. And those are the people who think that there's this knightly chivalrous code of honor where even if your opponent is a jackass, you need to chuck their opponent, their position up to something that it's not. And I literally think that this can lead to people talking past each other, which is unproductive. So, I mean, do you at least see where I'm coming from with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you call steel manning is actually a version of straw manning, where you present a different view, which seems more reasonable, but has obvious flaws that you can use as a weakness, which is a straw man. You're putting up something that's easier to refute as your opponent's position and making it seem like it's better, and that is literally just a straw man. So yeah, I think that
let me push it. Let me push it a little bit harder and say that even if I try to steel man someone's position in a way that doesn't have some flaw for me to turn around and beat, and they are disowning it, they're saying, no, that's not what I mean. I'm saying I am not talking about their position, and therefore I'm not talking about something that's relevant, and so I'd take it a little bit further than what you said.
Well, if it's not what they mean, then it can't be a steel man, because a steel man is literally just expressing the core of what they mean.
Okay, well, okay, so a steel man is expressing the core of what they mean. Yeah. I like the sound of that, but I'm not sure if that's how everyone would define it. I think it's, and I haven't Googled it, and I'm sure we'll find a billion different definitions of it, and so that's why I'm not a McRae who's going to argue with you about definitions. I'm just going to take your definition. I agree with your definition, okay? But I know.
McRae, one more time.
Gaspar, have you talked about the deduction induction thing tonight?
No. We talked about determinism and free will, and
it's quantum, isn't it? Quantum is the one you were talking about, definitely.
No, we're just not gonna look. I'm not gonna name any names. Quantum doesn't steel man.